B. This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
March the 4th, Durham riding voters went to the polls to elect a new MP. The overwhelming majority voted for this man, Conservative Jamil Jivani. Here's Jivani walking into his victory party that night after receiving more than 57% of the vote. Jamil Jivani joins us now in studio. It is such a pleasure to have you here in the studio. The first time you and I have had an opportunity to sit down and talk.
Yes, very happy to be here with you, Deb. I know you've spoken with many of the politicians in Durham Region, and as a newly elected MP, it's on my to-do list to sit down with you and answer your questions, so I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we're grateful that you are here. So I know you were confident of a win, but did you expect the results that you had?
I mean, no one could have expected that we would have won by such a large margin on Monday. We won by the biggest margin in the 20-year history of the Conservative Party of Canada, and we've had some great people serve this community, right? Aaron O'Toole, Bev Oda. So for us to win by that margin, I think was a surprise to us, a very good surprise, and one that just kind of blew me away and many of our supporters, just how strong of a showing we had on Monday.
What sort of message, and a lot has been made of what sort of message that sends to Trudeau and his Liberals? What do you make of it?
Yeah, well, I think a few things. So number one, that they're really not doing a good job running the country right now. I mean, people are just not happy with the status quo in Canada. And I think that was one of the reasons people were motivated to get out and vote for us at such a disproportionate number. They, almost 6 out of 10 people who voted came out to vote for us. So I think they want to let Trudeau know they're unhappy. The other thing is that I think the Conservative Party of Canada is the change party, that people who are wanting a change on a number of different issues, whether it be affordability, housing, they want changes to the economy, they want changes to taxes like the carbon tax. We're the party that people are looking to lead that change. So many people who may have leaned toward the NDP, for example, in past elections, I think are now considering us because they see us as the party that can deliver. So that was the message resoundingly that I came out of Monday's by-election, and also that I think people want Pierre Poilievre to be the Prime Minister. He's new to a lot of people in Durham. They're getting to know him as time goes on, and I think they like what they're seeing. And I think Pierre Poilievre is going to be the next Prime Minister, and hopefully, Monday just adds to the momentum he's already built across the country.
What's your personal message to the residents of Durham riding?
I know you want change. And I want to work hard for that change. I think that I met a lot of seniors who are concerned about whether their grandkids are ever going to afford a home. I met a lot of people my age, millennials, who are concerned about what the economy is going to look like when they're older. There's a lot of uncertainty, it feels like. And I want people to know in Durham and our communities, Clarington, Scugog, and Oshawa, that I'm here to fight for them and that their concerns are my concerns. I'm here to do a job and to do it well, and for them to hold me accountable as a representative. So I plan to work very hard. I think if you look into my background, you'll see I've been a hard worker. I've overcome adversity. I've committed myself to fighting for my values. I believe I share the values of the people of this community here in Durham, and I want to go to Ottawa and speak for those values every day.
It's clear when you look into your background, nobody handed you anything on a silver platter. You've had to really work hard and fight for everything that you have achieved. Let's get to know Jamil Jivani a little. You grew up in Brampton.
I did, yeah. I moved around a lot as a kid. I attended public school in Brampton and Mississauga and finished my childhood in North York. So I've seen a lot of different communities, like many of the new people who moved into Durham Region. I've lived across the Toronto area. And, I grew up with a lot of challenges, like a lot of kids do. I was raised primarily by my mom, so single mother, raising myself and my 2 younger sisters. I know what it's like to feel like life is hard and you're just constantly trying to overcome one, tough day after another. And I think that's partly why it took me a while to find myself and to live up to my potential as a young person. I failed the literacy test when I was in grade 10. A lot of people would have thought I was a problem child destined to, fall through the cracks and not make anything of myself. And I've been fortunate to see some real changes, in part because of the community support I had, mentors, people who took an interest in me when I was a lost young man, also a mom who just never gave up on me or my sisters and always believed in us even when we didn't believe in ourselves. And of course, because we live in a country where people have opportunity. There are very few countries where you can struggle that much as a kid and then by the age of 22 have a scholarship to Yale University for law school. I mean, it's a very unique journey. I do believe that's in part because Canada is a land of opportunity for people, and that's why I want to work hard to keep it that way.
I was going to ask you, we were talking before the interview just about taking the literacy test and that you'd failed it, and you said that was a bit of a turning point. How does a kid who fails a literacy test in grade 10 end up going to Yale Law?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is change in mentality. When I was living in my mom's house, we had so much chaos at home that sometimes it was really hard to just think. Sometimes it was hard to just have the confidence to try. And I had given up on myself. And I know a lot of young people are going through that. So maybe some people listening to this, maybe the children of some people listening to this right now. Kids have to believe that they can achieve things. And they need adults in their lives to remind them. And for me, it was my mom, because even when I was failing in school and I wasn't, meeting the grade level reading and writing standards, she never gave up on me. And when I was in a position where I was ready to actually believe in myself, all of a sudden her message started to come through. And for me, that happened after high school. I went to Humber College and then I went to York University. And, a year after almost failing out of school, I go to Humber College and I have the highest grades in the college. I got the President's Medal that year. I still remember the first time I got an A on an assignment. It was just shocking to me, and that just gradually builds up your confidence and your willingness to try hard. So I'm very big on encouraging young people to never give up on themselves and never think you know what you're capable of, because when you're 16, 17 years old, you don't know. Mm-hmm. And if you judge yourself based on what you're like at that age, you will limit your opportunities.
Oh, because everybody's judging you too.
Yes, yeah.
Especially these days.
Yeah, and judgment is very hard. I'm a big believer in God, and one of the reasons why is because I think it's important for us to know who the judge is, because the world will throw a lot at you. And sometimes, you might be the only one who thinks you can accomplish something, and sometimes you got to take that, to God. You got to have that community support, and that's going to be what gets you through the tough times.
So what was it that flipped that switch for you?
Well, partly it was getting, into a new environment. So leaving my parents' house, moving out on my own, working and having to earn my way and understanding what it looks like to be a responsible adult. Mm-hmm. And the thing I really liked about college and university is you get more autonomy on choosing your schedule. And for me, that was a big deal because I needed to feel responsibility. When I was a kid, I didn't feel it. I was taking things for granted, and I was kind of wasting my time, and the opportunities in front of me, I wasn't taking very seriously. So when I had that pressure of, well, now you have bills to pay. Now you have, to take care of yourself, and you've got an education now that is allowing you to do that. I started to realize if I wanted to make anything of myself, I had to put effort in. And that is the kind of meritocracy that I think is very important about Canadian society. We want to be a place where no matter what you look like or where you come from, you're able to come here and work hard pays off. Working hard pays off. And I think I had that experience, and that is what built my confidence, made me try. And then I also was blessed with incredible mentorship. I had college professors and university professors who saw potential in me and cultivated it. They could see that I was not someone who knew I could be a good student. I had never experienced what it was like to go to class and feel good about yourself. And they helped me develop that. And so it's a combination of a lot of things, but a lot of it is just, not being scared to try, even if you don't believe you can do well, just thinking it's worth giving it a shot. And for me, that was a really big deal. And it's a big part of my message, when we're knocking on doors and talking to people in our community, is just trying to remind people life can be very hard. Sometimes you're going to catch it in a down moment, but don't give up on yourself. And if you can encourage other people, you should try, because there are a lot of people, and anyone who's listening to us right now, they know somebody who could use an encouraging word.
True.
Yeah.
True. So what did you take at Humber, and how did that lead you to Yale Law?
Well, I did a course that's called a bridging program. So my grades were so bad in high school, I could not get into any programs. This is the program they do for students who can't qualify for anything else, to give you a chance to prove yourself and to learn some of the skills that you didn't learn in high school. So I did that, and so I learned how to read effectively, I learned how to write effectively, I learned how to be disciplined with my time, how to come to class and participate, and it was just almost like a catch-up on all the things I missed in high school. So that program was amazing, and I transferred from there to York University, and that's where I did a course in international development studies. I also studied nonprofit management. And what I loved about my time at York was it helped me realize, like, by learning, I could actually help solve some of the problems that I experienced as a kid. I could help neighborhoods get stronger. I could help people like my mom who are, struggling just to pay the bills. And it made me want to, pursue an education for a greater cause, a greater purpose beyond myself. And I just did really well. I worked so hard at York. Like, I used to sometimes have to sleep in the library. Like, Did
you really?
I really did. Under the desk, I would just, it'd be 3 a.m. and I was like, I can't make it home. And I'd just sleep. I would wake up and then I'd go to class in the morning. I worked as hard as I humanly could. And that's how I got the scholarship to Yale. Like, someone like me often doesn't get to go to schools like that because we can't afford it.
Yeah.
That the tuition at Yale was more money than my mom got paid an entire year. Yeah. And I knew I had to earn a scholarship if I was going to go to a school like that. And even then, the only reason I applied to Yale in the first place was because I randomly met a guy at a conference in Buxton, Ontario, which is a town founded by freed slaves who came to Canada. So they hold a conference every year at Labor Day. I went to the conference and I met a professor who teaches history at Yale. And he saw me do a presentation. He was like, "You're smart, you should apply to Yale." If he never said that to me, if he never showed that confidence in me, that positive word, I never would have applied. And I wouldn't have thought I would get a scholarship to a place like that.
Not many of us think about, hey, I should be going to an Ivy League school in the States, right?
Exactly. So just another example of people encouraging you and saying the right thing at the right time can make a world of difference. So because of that one interaction, I got the bright idea to apply. I didn't think I was going to get in, and I got in. And so that's how someone who failed the literacy test at 15 years old gets a scholarship to Yale Law School at 22. That kind of random mix of events, that hard work, the right people in your life at the right time.
Makes you question whether there are coincidence or if it isn't all.
Well, as I said, I believe in God,
right?
so I'm not a big believer in coincidence, but whatever it might be, I tell my story as often as I can. I was just at Durham Catholic High School a couple months ago, sharing this story with students, because I just want people to know that just because you have challenges to overcome doesn't mean your ceiling is lower. Doesn't mean what's possible for you is any less.
I'm going to stop you there. We're going to take a quick break. More of our conversation with newly elected MP for Durham Riding, Jamil Jivani, after this. Don't go away.
Well, we set out to send Justin Trudeau a message, and I think we were successful. Durham wants Pierre Poilievre to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, and I think that has been the resounding message from Scugog to Oshawa to Clarington, and I appreciate you all being here to celebrate this victory with us very much. Thank you.
Clubs, leagues, and courts in every province and territory across Canada, squash is the sport for wall-to-wall fun, fitness, and friendship. From coast to coast to coast. Learn to play and you'll want to do it every day. Squash. Play inside the box.
E-Day has finally arrived. The deadline is here.
It's NHL trade season, and Sportsnet is here for it with the NHL's most comprehensive coverage.
That's a team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup.
Are you betting your season on what you have right now?
On TV, the Sportsnet app, and sportsnet.ca with breaking news and insider information from hockey's most connected sources.
This is the ruthless pursuit of the Stanley Cup.
Hockey Central Trade Deadline, presented by Bet365, March 8th on Sportsnet.
Public transit, garbage pickup, parks and recreation programs, snow removal on your street. How can you stay informed about these and other important local services? Tune to City Council coverage on Rogers TV. See your community leaders at work on Rogers TV City Council coverage.
All right, Knights of Columbus TV Bingo right here on Rogers TV every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Your chance to win one of our 4 games, and our grand prize game is worth $5,000 right here on Rogers TV.
You're watching Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is newly elected MP for Durham Riding, Jamil Jivani. We're having a great conversation. I'm getting to know you, and I'm loving this. I have to ask you before we go any further. I have to ask you about election night and the championship belt, because our director wants to know all about that championship belt. You had a championship belt, or was that a gift from somebody?
We did. Well, Colin Carey, the Member of Parliament for Oshawa, who is our riding neighbor of mine, he presented to me that night. And honestly, most of it was just to be fun. Like I really believe politics should be something that people feel reflects them, and not something that is just ivory tower and where it's so above regular life. So I just wanted to do something that was kind of fun. And so when he gave me the belt, that's why we kind of made a big deal of it. And we took a lot of pictures that people really enjoyed it. People were holding it in their pictures. And when I was a kid, I was a big fan of professional wrestling. So it also was just kind of cool to hold the same belt that like Bret Hart and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin used to hold when I was like 10 years old. So who was your favorite wrestler? The Rock, probably. Yeah? Yeah. I remember my mom worked hard to save up money so she could take me to watch The Rock at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
Yeah, and when I was, I think, 10 or 11 years old. And it's one of my biggest memories, and I remember him being there and holding the belt and all that. It was pretty cool,
So there's the story. Director Douglas Boyd, the belt story. Did you grow up in a political family? Did you talk politics at all?
No. My mom was very focused on just kind of getting through the day-to-day. She kind of willed our family to a great point. And so she was just working hard all the time. We didn't talk about politics. Honestly, I didn't really think about politics until I started to learn more about it myself and realize that, it is an area of change. And some of the things that, my family was going through, maybe we could help people like us. So,
Were you a little disappointed in the voter turnout? I know you're, over 57% of the vote that came your way was great, but the voter turnout was still like 27%.
Yeah, I mean, by-elections tend to have voter turnout drop significantly. So we expected that could happen. But our job is to just talk to as many people as possible and leave it up to the voters to decide. And so we, plan to continue doing that between now and the general election. We are going to try to knock on every door multiple times, call every voter, and really show people that it makes a difference who you vote for. And hopefully we do a good enough job to show people that they want to all come out and make sure that I continue to be their MP and that we can achieve the change in who's leading the country, because I think Justin Trudeau needs to go, and I think Pierre Poilievre is going to be a great prime minister, and I really want to get as many people behind that as possible.
So where did your interest in politics then come from? What was the impetus there?
So I think a lot of it came from when I was in law school, because in law school you learn a lot about how decisions are made and sort of why we have the society we have. And it's hard when you grew up feeling like things weren't working for you, that life wasn't as easy for your mom as it should have been, that you're sort of compelled to want to change that, right? Change some of the policies and some of the legislation. And so that's what I think showed me politics is an important area of life. And then as I was just seeing the country move forward, I had a lot of different jobs. I worked as a writer, I worked as a lawyer, I worked as a professor in a law school, and it just became very clear to me that we need people to step up in politics who have the right intentions. I think I'm one of those people, and I felt a responsibility to get involved.
So while you were down at law school, you interned at the office of then Newark Mayor Cory Booker, now a Democratic U.S. Senator.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And I've read where one of your best friends was future Republican Senator J.D. Vance.
Yes.
How did what lessons did you learn from them that you think will translate now into your political career?
Well, I will tell you, the more I learned about American politics, the more I appreciated Canadian politics. So that is for certain. There is a lot of money in American politics that influences decisions that are made. And also because they only have two parties, it gets very, very partisan very quickly there.
Yeah.
And so there are some things about American politics I definitely don't want to see ever happen up here. One of the other things that I learned was just the importance of some of our structural differences, like having public health care. When I was working for Cory Booker, Newark, New Jersey is a very poor city. Yeah. A lot of people struggling, very high homicide rate, a lot of gangs and guns. So I learned pretty quickly that people who are struggling really do need to be able to go to the doctor and not have to worry about going bankrupt. Yeah. Especially as a cancer survivor now. Like I look back and I'm like, wow, like in the U.S., one of the leading causes of bankruptcy is being sick. And if I had gotten cancer and I was an American, I might be in debt right now because of it. So that was a really alarming thing for me when I was in the U.S. And then, of course, the other thing is just I appreciate that we're very busy talking about solving problems in Canadian politics, even if I disagree with some other parties' solutions. I appreciate that part of this job is waking up and saying, we have a housing crisis, what do we do about it? In American politics, they tend to be very distracted by the theater of politics. There's such a big stage, a lot of attention on them. I don't think they spend as much time actually thinking about, well, how do you solve a problem, not just how do you win the news cycle. So I appreciate that we don't have that to the same degree, at least in Canadian politics. But I did learn a lot, from those experiences. And that's one of the benefits of going to a school like Yale is you do get exposed to a lot of different things and a lot of different ways of looking at life. And I did appreciate that. Meeting people who had different life experiences, like my friend JD, who grew up in a more rural community. His, family comes from Appalachia, very different than being from suburban Toronto. And, he grew up mostly around people who look like him, mostly, in white areas. I grew up in a community that was mostly Jamaican and Punjabi. So we had so many different life experiences, and it was just cool to say, like, see the differences, but also to be like, well, he grew up without a dad, I grew up without a dad, and that's what brought us together, was that despite the obvious differences between us, we actually had a lot in common. And that's like a cool thing to learn, just because even in a community like ours, like we have very rural areas, we have people who've moved here recently, we have people who've lived here for generations, and we've all got to figure out how to share this community together so our kids can grow up and have a healthy life. And I think that's part of the life experience I've accumulated.
I have to ask you, you're also an author. In 2019, you published Why Young Men, The Dangers of Violent, and the Allure of Violent Movements and What We Can Do About It. What brought you to write this book?
So at the time, I was actually in Belgium, and I had flown to Belgium to do research, trying to understand why there were so many young men in Belgium being recruited by ISIS and other terrorist organizations. I was just curious because, having grown up in struggling circumstances, it was heartbreaking to me to see young men making such bad choices and doing such criminal, violent things. And I just thought, I'm in Toronto, sort of looking at these guys from here and thinking, like, is there anything we could do to actually help fix this? Because people were getting hurt. And that was shortly after the Paris attacks, where lots of people were hurt by terrorists. So I flew there. And I lived in one of the communities where terrorists were recruiting young men. And in the research I did, I realized these guys actually have a lot in common with young men who are struggling here. In a Toronto neighborhood or a Chicago neighborhood, it might be joining a gang. In some communities, it might be joining a racist group or a white nationalist group. In that community, it was joining a terrorist organization. But the life experience and the isolation and the unhealthiness in the lives of these boys and young men was a common thread. And I wanted to write a book that would explore those themes, because a lot of young men struggle, and a lot of young men struggle in silence. Men tend to have a hard time talking about what's going on in their lives, and sometimes it takes a lot of suffering before we're willing to say, hey, this is why I'm feeling really down right now, or here are the challenges I'm facing and why I feel abandoned by my community. And so I want to just help with that, as best as I can. Like, there's a very clear correlation, I would argue even in some cases a causation, between economics getting tougher and it being harder to provide for your family and provide for yourself, and men struggling with mental health or other issues. So, we live at a time where there are people struggling in our economy, and I want to make sure that young men don't suffer more than necessary through that. So that's why I wrote the book. And it was important research for me to do also in learning about myself, because I often look back at my life and say, well, when I had failed that literacy test in high school, there were a lot of different paths available to me. Most of them were really bad and negative. And I was fortunate to wind up on a path of positivity, but a lot of young men aren't. And I have a heart for them because I want them to change. And I know that they can contribute to society, they can do right by their families, they can do good things, but sometimes they need people to understand them to be able to deliver that message.
Yeah, and you write in the book about, you were tempted.
Yes.
To take the wrong path. What was it that stopped you? With temptation all around you?
Yeah, well, there's a very particular moment in my life that I write about in the book where I wanted to get a gun so that I could look tough and impress my friends and some of the older guys in my neighborhood. And I came close to buying one, and it was, a mix of the grace of God and just the right influences in my life where I actually didn't make that bad choice, in part because of my mom. She really believed in me, even when I was like making a real idiot. And I just knew that I would have crossed a line where I might have lost her trust in me, her confidence. I just didn't want to break her heart. And I often tell parents and young people, it's really important for kids to have someone they can disappoint, someone who thinks high enough of them that if they make a bad choice, they could actually hurt somebody, break their heart. And that was my mom for me. Organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters provide kids like I was with mentors who play that same role. It doesn't always have to be a parent, but I think every kid needs an adult who cares about them. And in my case, my mom saved me from making a really bad choice when I was a kid.
Well, Jamil Jivani, we are glad that you didn't make that bad choice.
Yeah,
We're glad that you're here. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show.
No, thank you for your time.
And we'd love to have you back.
Look forward to it.
Okay, I'm holding you to that. Our guest this week has been newly elected MP for Durham Riding, Jamil Jivani. On behalf of all of us here at Rogers TV, thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
I'm Carolyn King, and I'm a member of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the creator of the Moccasin Identifier. Philip Cote, an artist in Toronto here, took and redrew real moccasins. We're starting over with the children. The idea is that they would research whose land their school is built on, near, or what treaty area they're in. And the educational kit that we have has all that information in there. And the children just, love it. My dream is that this province will be covered with moccasin identifiers within the next decade, and they will forever know whose land they're on. That's the goal. Educate and awareness with a nice, simple little program called the Moccasin Identifier.
These days at your local Legion, we're marching to the beat of a different drum. On a mission to support veterans, to have fun, and to welcome everyone.